gentlemen, and welcome to the Chicago Board of Elections regular board meeting of May 12, 2020. If at any time during this call you need assistance, please press *0 for the operator. Also note that this call is being recorded. And I would like to turn the conference over to Marisel Hernandez, Chair of the Chicago Board of Elections. Please go ahead, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. We will call to order the regular board meeting of the Chicago Board of Election Commissioners. Good morning. With me is Commissioner William Kresse and Commissioner Jonathan Swain.
I'm here.
Good. Next item on the agenda is the consideration of the agenda. Are there any proposed changes? If not, we'll proceed with the approval of the special board meeting minutes of February 18, 2020. Is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Is there a second?
As second by Commissioner Kresse.
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Commissioner Swain votes aye. Commissioner Kresse votes aye.
Commissioner Swain?
Commissioner Swain votes aye.
Okay, thank you. The motion passes. Next on the agenda is the Executive Director's report. Mr. Goff.
Thank you, Madam Chair and board members. We are, as you know, the office is there's a shutdown, but some of us are still coming in. All our bills are being paid. We're answering questions. We're still meeting. Managers are still meeting. In fact, Charles will talk about that today. What I'd like to do is, because of social distancing that we need to look at the way we do our training of our poll workers. We need to look at to do online training platforms for election coordinators, election judges, online training for volunteer deputy registrars, and online training for early voting. As you know, we will be concentrating on ways to take care of huge vote by mail that we expect, but I'm still thinking that we will have early vote, and we possibly will still have precincts that will be open. So we need to work on online training on that. Other items for what we need to do for the upcoming elections, and Ms. Walls is working on that. PPE supplies, gloves, face masks, hand sanitizers, plexiglass safety shields, voting booth privacy wings, disinfected cleaners, disinfected wipes, Lysol disinfected sprays, hand soap, and paper towels. These are supplies that we're going to need in such large quantity. For instance, face masks. After looking at what we may need, we need to order anywhere between 60,000 and 75,000 face masks. Hand sanitizers. We need the big half-gallon bottle in each one of our early voting sites, and a large bottle in each one of the polling places, if we do have them. Other items we need to look at with the influx in a large vote by mail, we need to look at mail openers that will extract ballots from envelopes. We're going to be doing a lot. We're going to be looking at some high-speed scanners that will need workstations with that. We're looking at professional grade air purifiers, and we'll need an Agilis machine also. As you know, right now the Agilis that we have worked out very well, but if it backs down, it could back up all of our vote by mail. So we need to purchase another one of those items. So these are items that I'm working on with Ms. Walls. One other item that we're looking at is a temperature kiosk to register. I have a lot of employees that are very dedicated, and in the past they've come to work sick. We need to make sure that people that have temperatures and that are sick do not come into the office. On this kiosk, I'm asking for Joan Agnew to work with Ms. Walls to review that because it does have impact on personnel matters. So we'll work on that. Another item that we need to look at right now is how we're going to print our ballots. Are we going to print them by ballot style or by ward and precinct? Depending on what we do, that will have an impact, a huge impact on getting out our ballots on time. As I just want to let the board members know that I have buildings coming in to do a deep cleaning this week. We will probably do another deep cleaning prior to when we open up the office again. And those are items that I just wanted to run by my board members so you know what we're working on right now.
Are there any questions?
Yeah, this is Commissioner Swain. I have a couple questions and comments. Lance, thank you for all the work on trying to do this. I know a lot of this is, unless you've been around in 1918, you wouldn't have to think about this for an election. But, my question to you is, have we got any consultation about best practices for operating our office moving forward? I mean, I know what you talked about, wanting to get the temperature read kiosk, which I think is a great idea. But beyond that, have we got any advice from any public health agencies to try to give us some instruction? Because obviously we're going to have more people coming in the office as we move closer to the election. That a lot of stuff cannot be done remotely. Are we consulting with anybody, getting advice, direction?
Yes, we are. In fact, the CDC has put out a pamphlet on that, and there are other medical groups out there that are doing that, and I am working from those. I will send copies out to everybody so you can see. But this is something that I'm not doing without any consultant from anybody else. And we're also, I was on the line last week with EAC, the Election Assistance Commission, talking about voting equipment, but we also talked about how would you operate an election in November, and that's some information that I've put together and I will send out to my board members. But I'm working with other people.
Okay, I can appreciate that. Let me ask this question about testing. Have we looked into any kind, because we do have people coming in the office, fairly decently or regularly. Have we looked into the question of regular testing for folks that do come in the office? I know some private sector employers are testing people regularly to make sure that they're not carrying the virus.
Just to let you know that I've been having, we have a roadblock on that. I've discussed it with several hospitals and other people, and they will not test anybody unless they show symptoms of it. The idea that anybody can get tested anytime they want is not happening.
Unless you're in the White House. I think that's right because there's just not enough tests to go around at this time.
In fact, I've even tried to be tested, and they won't test me. I've gone to Northwestern Hospital, and they said, no, you don't show any signs of it. You're not running a temperature. We're not going to run a test on you. And I live only a couple of blocks away from Northwestern Hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Well, if there's an ability to do that, I mean, I find it interesting. Professional sports franchises can get it done, but when it comes to central government services, it's a challenge. But we won't editorialize that at this point. But okay, as long as we're getting advice,
you're absolutely right, Commissioner Swain.
So as long as we get direction from people and making sure that we're using the best practices for office management and things of that nature, fine. I want to make sure that we're not trying to come up with this on our own.
Nope. In fact, what I'm doing is I'm making sure that I'm running it by professionals on the outside also on a lot of this. I want the board members to be aware of that. I'm not taking this lightly at all. Every day I'm nervous about, bringing people into harm's way. So we're looking at this. Like I said, I'm consulting with everybody.
Sure, appreciate it.
Lance, Commissioner Kresse here. Just on that same thought, are we communicating, or what is our policy to our people? You were saying, we don't want anybody in there who's sick. Do we make it clear to them that there will be no penalty, no problems? We want to encourage them to stay away if they're not ill and not worry about coming in and getting paid, something like that.
And our human resource department's done a very good job on that. Lucretia has worked with that, and we've had discussions on that. She's a little more strong-handed than I am, but she's making sure that nobody should be coming in unless they're absolutely necessary.
Good, very good. Thank you.
I think Joan and Lucretia, I think Lucretia sent out something either yesterday or this morning, I can't remember,
because
about this.
Yeah, there was somebody in the building that had tested positive. So
exactly.
We let all of our employees know what's going on.
Right, exactly. But I think Lucretia and Ms. Agnew will continue to work together to find out the best way to do this and address any employee concerns and issues.
That's why I'm
excellent.
With the temperature kiosk, I'm asking Ms. Walls if she would share that with Ms. Agnew to review that, because it will impact on personnel.
If Commissioner Swain is done, I have a question for Lance. Okay, hearing none. Are you done, Commissioner Swain?
I am. Go ahead.
Okay. Lance, regarding the Agilis machine, since those are going to be in great demand, is it even possible for us to get a second one of those at this point?
When we first started talking about that, we've already ordered it, so it's on order for us.
Excellent. Very good. Good. Being a way to be proactive there, Lance. Thank you.
We've been talking to the people from Runback, who we purchased our first one from, and they have other ideas of how to speed up the vote by mail. So we've been working with other people. We've been working with folks at the post office, with our mail house provider. Hensley's been working on that. So everybody's on top of what we need to do.
Excellent. Thank you, Lance.
Given all of what Lance you have reported, and following up on what Commissioner Swain said earlier, we really do appreciate that for this coming election, that which will be so probably very different from all others. Again, just like the March was, we so appreciate your years of experience and your expertise in this area. And I know that your intention is to retire, but it is my hope, and I know the hope of the commissioners, that you stay on and direct this election, this November election, as the executive director, and I hope you're able to do that.
As long as the board members do start reviewing other people to take over this position. It's been an honor to serve with the board. In fact, I was on a call with the EAC last week, and they said, Lance, we thought you retired. And I said, well, I haven't retired yet. I'm waiting to hear what's going to happen. So
yeah.
I will never let this office down. I've been here 42 years, and it's a part of me. So I'll do whatever the board members wish. I serve at the wish of my board. And just to let you know, one person doesn't make it. I mean, nobody's expendable. If something happened to me tomorrow, trust me, you have enough capable people in this office that can take over and run with it. You have some outside consultants that are very good. Gary Rezizin, Dean Fatikas, Ron Boyd. I can name off so many people that have done a great job. And your management staff here at the board is some of the best. So one person won't, I don't think will bring this office down.
Madam Chair, this is Commissioner Kresse. I just want to concur in your thoughts about keeping Lance on. Lance, despite what you say, I would like that you keep with us through the November election. In fact, I want to make sure that nothing happens to you. Can we order some bubble wrap for you?
Oh, well, we will try. We will try.
Stay healthy, Lance.
Yeah. I think there's consensus that you will, Lance, be there for us throughout this, up through the into the November election, and be another last successful election. So thank you so much.
Lance, you're giving more comebacks than Cher.
Tell me about it. That's what somebody else made that comment with. But just to let you know, as long as I have a team together, and Charles is as the assistant executive director, has done an excellent job, and he's very, 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 very knowledgeable what's going on. Like I said, all of your managers here are just excellent. So I think we will not have a problem for the November election.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, if there are no further comments, I will proceed with the Assistant Executive Director's report. Mr. Holliday, how are you?
Fine. Good morning, Madam Chair and fellow commissioners. I just have to report just here supporting Lance and all that is going on. And as you spoke about the Agilis, tomorrow, Clint Hurd and I, we have a conference with our new Agilis representative from Rumback. So that is in the process, and we'll talk with him tomorrow. Just in contact with the staff and management, and registration department is keeping up to date with the online registration and all the online activity far as the IVRS from the state. Later this week, I have scheduled a web conference with the management. Instead of Zoom, we're using what they call WebEx. Our IT director, Matt Lynn, states that it's a little more secure than Zoom, so we're going to use WebEx.
Mm-hmm. And you're going to use it for what this week?
This week, I'm going to have a meeting with all the management, the managers, so we can talk about how we're going to proceed and just get a better picture of where we are with the different procedures and items that need to be taken care of to lead us up to November. So that's it. That's all I have at the time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now we'll proceed to old business infrastructure projects and changes in election administration and voting equipment. Have we discussed everything regarding voting equipment and projects thus far? I think we did with. Mm-hmm.
Madam Chair, I believe we skipped over Communications Director.
I'm sorry. Is there any report?
There's no
communication.
Good morning.
Okay.
There's nothing additional to report other than the work on flipping the web content for November and the design of the canvas, which we submitted for the the proposals for the possibilities of including a vote by mail application in the canvas mailing.
Thank you. Going back to the infrastructure projects and changes in election administration and voting equipment, is there anything additional that needs to be addressed there?
None at all, Madam Chair.
How about electronic poll books? Anything there?
We're still working on some other items with, Charles is working with some other items with ES&S, so as soon as he gets the answers of some of these questions, we'll be able to report back to the board.
Okay. Legislation, Mr. Lasker?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Commissioners. I have been moving forward with the legislative ideas, outlines that we've been discussing. We have received strong positive feedback from the County Clerk's Office, which does intend to move forward in discussing these issues with state leaders along with us. We have a conference scheduled for this afternoon where the county attorney from the County Clerk's Office will be joining me, discussing some of these issues preliminarily with the Executive Director and Legal Counsel for the State Board of Elections. And so that's the first main step towards opening the door on all those conversation points. I also did have an opportunity to share some questions with the Legislative Director for the State Board last week. So that's all moving forward. There still is no real certainty as to when the legislature is going to meet. They had been planning on meeting last week. Still hasn't happened. So we are, of course, keeping our eyes on the bills that are currently in there to see what happens. One thing I would note is that in a presentation last week, the State Board Legislative Director did indicate that they're still receiving communications, receiving calls from State Representative Julie Morrison, who's introduced a bill that would put to an all vote-by-mail election this November. We had previously heard some public statements by commissioners of the State Board saying they did not think that was the way the state was going to go. But that would be a major change, as we've discussed, so we're clearly watching those things to see if there's any movement on them once the legislature finally does meet. But in the meantime, we're just glad that we're being able to share our ideas. It seems to be working well in the sense that election authorities can help advise state leaders as to what the administrative challenges are for any sort of election changes they might make for November. So that's what we've got for legislation at the moment. Oh, and also still hoping that the federal legislation will pass for some additional funding for election infrastructure based on coronavirus.
Okay, so Mr. Lasker, what's the next step then in terms of legislation, proposed legislation? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so after we meet with the Executive Director of the State Board today to discuss these things, we then will work on sending out our ideas to the state leadership and the legislature and the governor's office, and just essentially making ourselves available. There's quite a bit of information and ideas in the draft that we've been working on, and that's just to open the door to conversation, make sure they understand we're very interested in doing whatever we can to assist them in the process of creating the legislation. And then next steps, of course, also just watching what the legislature does when it finally is able to convene a session.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Next item, we will now proceed to new business. And the first item is an attorney-contractor agreement between the Board of Election Commissioners for the City of Chicago and Joan T. Agnew, attorney at law. Mr. Lasker, can you talk about this agreement?
Of course, as you well know, Joan has been serving admirably as an attorney for the board for quite some time now, both as a legal counsel along with myself. She also focuses heavily on employment matters and helps handle internal employee matters, working with the Human Resources Department and the Executive Director. She serves as the board's Freedom of Information Officer, in addition to an ethics advisor. She has, yet again, for this past March, really stepped up to show her experience with the internal operations of an election canvass, obviously conducting the election itself, but also the post-election activities. And she is assisting with preparing for the discovery recount that we'll be conducting as soon as it's safe to do so. So for this, her contract does expire at the end of this month. The contract that's been proposed to you is the same contract as it has been for several years now. No changes to any of the terms of it other than the time period in which it would cover for another year. So that is the contract that we are requesting the board to renew.
Okay, and that's at the rate of $295 an hour?
$250 an hour.
I'm sorry, 250.
Yes.
Okay, so let me, are there any questions? If not, is there a motion to approve the attorney contract agreement between the Board of Election Commissioners and Joan T. Agnew for the term of June 1st, 2020 through May 31st, 2021 at the rate of $250 per hour?
Commissioner Kresse, moved.
Is there a second?
Second by Commissioner Swain.
Okay. There's a motion and there's a second. All those in favor?
Commissioner Kresse votes aye.
Commissioner Swain votes aye.
Okay. The motion passes. Thank you so much. Next item is the adoption of the board's revised 2020 election calendar. Again, Mr. Lasker?
And thank you again, Madam Chair. The Northern District Federal Court here in Chicago had, on April 23rd, entered an order affecting new political party candidates and independent candidates. And when I say new political parties, that's the statutory term for a political party that is not, quote-unquote, established under Illinois law. So even though the Libertarian Party and Green Party have been around in the state of Illinois for quite some time, they are the two plaintiffs in this lawsuit, and they currently sit as new political parties. On behalf of independents and new parties which follow the same statutes, this court order has substantially reduced the signature requirements for the petitions that they would normally file this summer. It has also extended by 6 weeks the filing deadline for those offices, those candidates. And there are other changes as well, including allowing electronic signatures on their nominating petitions. Because of the changes in signature requirements and the filing period, our election calendar no longer reflected the accurate information. And so I have gone through and made note that there are amendments to those signature requirements and filing periods due to this case, which is Northern District case number 20-CV-2112. So that's the changes in the book, and that's what we're asking for approval for today, so that we can put this revised version up on the website. The old dates and so forth are still in there, as crossed out. One thing I would point to, and this is jumping forward to my legal report, but the State Board of Elections did just file a motion for reconsideration in that case, not a full reconsideration, only that aspect that extended the filing period. The order was previously entered on an expedited basis through preliminary injunction legal work, and the motion now for reconsideration claims on behalf of the state that not enough proper consideration was given at the time of the preliminary injunction order to the effect of extending that filing period by 6 weeks, which of course dramatically impacts our ability to timely conduct electoral board hearings. It actually, the motion points out that under the extended timeline, the very first day that an electoral board would be able to hear those objections would also be the very first day that the ballots are supposed to be certified. So, I am asking that you make these changes now on this book, because the state board has made changes to their guidebook. We do want ours to be up to date. However, the possibility does exist that I'll come back to you to undo some of these changes. We shall see. But that's where we're at for today. I would appreciate your approval of the amendment.
Any questions? If not, is there a motion to approve the board's revised 2020 election calendar? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there?
Okay.
Okay.
Second by Commissioner Kresse. Second by Commissioner Kresse. Commissioner Kresse votes aye.
Commissioner Swain votes aye.
Okay, thank you. Motion passes. Next item is the legal report. Mr. Lasker?
So in addition to the motion for reconsideration by the State Board, I just wanted to point out that there was been some discussion of the procurement of an Agilis machine. I have been working with the board's procurement officer, Opal Walls, and with Mr. Goff on that. There will be a contract put in front of the board in the near future, but in the meantime, I am quite relieved to see that it's been promised that there's a machine available for us, and the negotiations of that are continuing. Just so that you know, the Seventh Circuit Appellate Court, Federal Court, has recently issued a statement that all of its hearings will be by video conference extending out through the month of June. So the federal court system here is considering that kind of social distancing all the way through the month of June now. The last thing I'd like to report on is that last week I attended the AECOI conference, the annual May conference. That's the Association of Election Commission Officials of Illinois. Technically, Chicago hosted the event. Audra Lewicki, one of our board managers, did a great job setting that all up and hosting it virtually. It was done by a Zoom meeting, even though normally we would get together and have in-person conferences. So it felt a little bit different than usual. Didn't get to go out to dinner with our friends, but at least we were able to have our conference and our discussions, and also some really good interaction with the State Board of Elections that came with their several different members of that board to discuss various issues of election administration. I would just point out that of the 6 commissions that are a member of AECOI, it sounds like only one of them did not have any polling place cancellations. Danville, I believe, was the only election commission in the state to not have any polling place cancellations in March. However, they did have some judge of election cancellations. They were able to maintain at least 3 judges per precinct, but they were substantially down from the regular norm. All other members of the commission did see polling place cancellations, many of which were from nursing homes, just like we experienced up here. And they also did experience, every other commission experienced judges of election who didn't serve on election day. And they're all also anticipating these problems to still exist come November, given what the latest reports from medical experts are showing. So the relationship is still strong among the election commissions. Everybody did get through it and made their March primary as good as possible. And so we're all also going to remain in touch as we work forward for November.
Great. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Kresse.
Yes. Yes.
I just want to note, by the way, last Friday, the Chicago Bar Association Election Law Committee had its meeting, and our general counsel, Mr. Lasker, was the guest speaker, and he made the Chicago board very proud. He did an excellent job there. I just wanted to put that in the record.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Kresse. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to the next item on the agenda, financial report. We have a balance sheet and voucher listing for the City of Chicago 2020 appropriation number 20-01, dated May 12th, 2020, in the amount of $795,040.55. Is there a motion to approve?
Commissioner Kresse, so moved. I'll let Commissioner Swain move. Commissioner Kresse will second.
Okay, thank you. It's been properly moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Commissioner Kresse votes aye.
Okay, both Commissioner Kresse and Commissioner Swain voted aye. Motion passes, and the voucher is approved. Next, we have a balance sheet and voucher listing for the County of Cook 2020 appropriation number 20-01, dated May 12, 2020, in the amount of $2,973,623.11. Is there a motion to approve?
Commissioner Kresse, so moved.
Commissioner Kresse moves.
Commissioner Swain, second.
Commissioner Swain seconds. It's been motioned and seconded. All those in favor?
Commissioner Kresse votes aye.
Commissioner Swain votes aye.
Great. Motion passes. Next on the agenda we have a public comment. Sylvia, do we have anyone for public comment?
Yes, Madam Chair, you will hear first from Donald Olson. Please go ahead, sir.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. It's been a while since I've seen you. And of course, I'm not seeing you today. Well, first of all, this is just such an extraordinary situation we're in. And I sure wouldn't want to be Lance Goff right now, I'll tell you. With everything coming up in this election, it's going to be complicated. So thank you, Mr. Goff, for everything you do. First of all, I'd like to make some comments about the March primary, just some observations, which may have already been made. I haven't been keeping up on the board meetings, so some of these remarks may have already been made. One of the problems we noticed was that the pens used for marking regular paper ballots leaked through the ballots to the back side of the ballot. And we were concerned whether or not the ballot scanners were reading the ballots correctly because of that. So we should have pens that do not leak through to the back side of the ballots. Another thing that I found to be very problematic, there's a long tradition of when ballots are transported, they should be transported by not a single person, but by hopefully a Democratic and a Republican judge. And the ballots that were transferred, at least in the early voting site that I was in, the ballots that were transferred by one investigator to the warehouse on Pershing. And that we know our investigators are generally off-duty or retired police officers. And I just found that to be really problematic because, I don't consider the Fraternal Order of Police to be a non-political organization. And to put all the ballots every night into the hands of someone from the Fraternal Order of Police seemed problematic to me. There should have been at least two people bringing those ballots to the warehouse. Another question came up, and I don't know if this has been resolved, but since the early voting sites were extended through Election Day, there was some question about whether at the end of Election Day, whether they should be running a tape and a results tape on the ballot scanners, and whether that tape could be made available to the poll watchers. I know I just have a very little bit of anecdotal evidence on this. I know that in some polling places they did not run a results tape, and in other polling places they did. So that's something that should be decided. If the early voting sites are going to be extended through Election Day, should they run a results tape in the polling place before they close down that polling site? I would say yes, because if the polling place is extended through Election Day, then they should behave the way every Election Day polling place behaves, and those result tapes should be produced and should be made available to the poll watchers. So now I'd like to talk about this I'm very concerned about mail-in ballots. As I'm sure we all are in different ways, there's so many ways this could be problematic, especially if there's a great increase in the number of mail-in ballots. So I have to say, once again, at this point, what I always say, that a public election should not be a bureaucratic endeavor, but it's a public endeavor. It's not the bureaucracy alone that does it. Elections, to be legitimate and verifiable, must include public observation, and what that means is poll watchers. Poll watchers should be included at every possible point, and the extent to which poll watchers are included is the extent to which that election is legitimate. So I'm concerned that poll watchers should be allowed to challenge the signatures on vote-by-mail ballots. They should be allowed to see those signatures and challenge them the way they're allowed to challenge the signatures on every other kind of ballot. Early voting, election day, I believe even a nursing home. So I think that's an oversight in the law. The law says in all those other cases that poll watchers may challenge the signatures. In regard to regular mail-in ballots, it simply says poll watchers may be present. I think that's an oversight in the law that should be corrected, and if we're going to change our mail-in ballot laws, that's something that should be addressed. Poll watchers, to have an increased number of mail-in ballots without the inclusion of poll watchers in the process would be very problematic, in my estimation. Poll watchers should also be able to see the postmarks. The only two things that validate a mail-in ballot is the postmark and that signature, and poll watchers should be part of both of those processes. Just a few other thoughts about mail-ins that I'm concerned about, especially if we're increasing mail-in ballots. I believe that mail-in ballots should be part of the 5% audit, which they are not now. But if an increasing percentage of the vote is going to be by mail-in, then that absolutely should be included in the 5% audit. As far as having collection boxes throughout the state so that voters have an option to not mail in their ballot, I would say no to collection boxes. I think that just starts a whole another possibility for boxes being stuffed and or damaged, or I just think that's a terrible idea. I'm concerned about chains of custody with mail-in ballots. The board has had problems in the past with that. In 2014, a number of mail-in ballots that arrived late were included in the count. I think that we should look at every step of the chain of custody of mail-in ballots and make it better. Another concern is, and this, you probably thought of this, is that if the increase in mail-in ballots is significant, which it probably will be, you may need to extend the proclamation date, because processing those ballots could take extra time, and 3 weeks might not be enough to do all that. And as far as whether ballots, I know it's been proposed that ballots be sent to all registered voters. I think that's a bad idea. I think you might be in agreement with this. Applications could be sent to all registered voters, but not ballots. And I would just conclude by saying, I know a lot of the proponents of vote by mail are pointing to the low instance of court cases involving fraud in vote by mail ballots, and they're citing that as proof that fraud is low. But I don't necessarily believe that. Fraud is very difficult to detect in vote by mail. And I think that's the reason there have been so few cases. The key to not having fraud in vote by mail is to have the process be more observed. So I go back to my original point. If we're going to increase vote by mail and expand it, we need to remember that if the process is to be legitimate, we need to include poll watchers in every possible step. And my number one concern is in the signature, in checking the signatures for their validity. So that is all I have to say. Thank you very much, and good luck to all of you. Man, I don't envy you your job in this election. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. Okay, Sylvia, who is our next speaker?
Madam Chair, you will hear next from Claire Tobin. Please go ahead.
Oh, good morning. Hi, this is Chairwoman, and I'm really happy to hear everybody is in good health and staying safe. And I know everyone has a lot of pressures these days, and so elections are one of those high priority things that we have to provide good solutions for. And I know that many people and organizations are promoting the mail-in ballots as the solution. And I have what I call a modest proposal, thinking about Jonathan Swift, famous Irish writer from long, long ago. Anyway, so my idea is to focus on expanding the early voting system with one voting center per ward for 14 days before the election, with the addition of paper ballots that are available just, for people to vote in that ward. So voting center per ward. This would require maybe 6 or 8 different ballot styles for the ballots to be printed and available in the ward. And I'm not sure if this is an accurate number or not. I know normally in a precinct there may be 2 or 3 different ballot styles, but I'm sure Lance knows all this information at the top of his head. But the advantage for having paper ballots available for ward residents would allow people to line up at a safe distance, similar to how people are lining up to enter, the grocery stores. And we're all, living with that, and, people feel comfortable with it. So the other reason why I'm stressing paper ballots is I checked the number of ballots cast in the 2018 election, which had a 61% turnout with 912,000 ballots throughout the 50 wards. And total turnout per ward ranged from a low of like 7,359 for the 15th ward to a high of 30,062 for the 47th ward. But most of the wards were between 20 to 25,000. So if we take like 20,000 as an average ward, say, with 80% of the people choosing to vote early at the vote centers and only 20% would vote by mail, this would give 16,000 early votes and 4,000 mail-in ballots per average ward. So if you divide the 16,000 voting in person over the 14 days in the voting center, which might be open from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., like 10 hours, so dividing that out, you get 1,142 per day per voting center or 114 per hour. So this problem with using the ballot marking devices in early voting is that to accommodate, what we think might be an increased number of people voting, is that it takes at least 5 minutes for someone, and sometimes even 8 minutes, to vote on the ballot marking device. And this is based on looking on election day at Truman College, and also for the municipal elections that Cook County held out in Oak Park, River Forest, and those places, when there were only like 4 or 5 different races to be voted on. And even there it was taking like 5 minutes. So based on 114 people per hour in an early voting center voting, a ballot marking device would only accommodate 22 people per hour, whereas paper ballots were much more efficient and would only take maybe 3 or 4 minutes per person. So I think that this solution offers many advantages over mail-in ballots. Eliminates the need to validate the signature match at a later date. I mean, as you know, I support Don and his talk about including poll watchers in the validation of the signatures. And if you're having a huge number, it's just going to be impossible, even with Zoom conferencing or whatever. So it also allows for the vast majority of the ballots to be counted on election night. something which, the media is always talking about, but this is going to be a big issue in November. People are not going to be happy waiting for 2 weeks for the result of the election. And it also provides greater chain of custody of the ballot. Each election board employee would collect the voted ballots and transport them every night to election central to the warehouse. There would also be a huge savings in postage and printing costs and savings in personnel costs. So these are just, my thinking, and I hope that maybe that's among some of the ideas that you're already considering, and that we'll find out about that soon. But I thank you for giving me this opportunity and wish everybody well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sylvia, do we have any further public comments?
Yes, Madam Chair. You will hear next from Carol Mahar. Please go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Good morning.
What's the name?
Carol
Hi.
Maher.
Hi, Ms. Maher. Go ahead.
Morning. And I wanted to speak to my experience at Wilson.
I think you're fading. You're fading in and out.
Sorry, I'll fix it up. I wanted to speak once again about my experience as an election official during early voting and an election coordinator on election day for many election cycles. I'd like to share my observations and learnings and concerns from my experiences. Starting on early voting, days off. At the last meeting, you mentioned increasing the number of days for early voting from 15 to 20. I understand why we want to do this for the November election to improve participation while keeping lines down. You must allow for days off for your early voting workers. Requiring them to work 15 days straight, plus now election day, puts lots of stress on people. Not having any days off to go to the grocery store, do your laundry, to attend to appointments, to sleep in is unhealthy. Many of your early voting workers are older, and the lack of any days off for people who aren't used to working every day puts people's mental and physical health at risk. Please consider this. Secondly, pay. Early voting workers are long overdue a pay raise. Minimum wage in Chicago is $13, the amount that early voting workers have been paid for many elections. This needs to be increased in light of the potential minimum wage increase on July 1st. Now that you are requiring early voting workers to work on election day, you are also having an adverse impact on those workers who typically work as election coordinators on election day and earn $450. You're also poaching your best workers from working on election day. So please take this into consideration when you expand EV sites to election day sites, in that you're costing people a serious amount of money. Armed investigators during early voting. During the March primary, an armed investigator was assigned to each EV site. At one location, the sidearm was not concealed and was proudly worn on the hip of the investigator. This presented a hostile environment for both workers and voters and resulted in a bad outcome at that site. There are several questions regarding EV investigators that should be asked by the board, including, what is the role of the EV investigator? On election day, investigators visit many sites throughout the day, spending minutes on site, and are available by phone to assist if the need arises. During early voting, the investigator at the site has nothing to do. Their role needs to be defined so they do more than stare at their phone or play online games all day. How are these investigators vetted? What type of background checks and reviews are performed before hiring these folks? I personally have had two very bad experiences with two different people. One who made sexually explicit comments to me and sexually harassed another employee is still working for you. The other, hopefully, is on the do not hire list based on his behavior. If your argument is that the investigator is delivering live ballots each night and needs to be armed, I challenge that line of thought. On election day, 2,069 precincts worth of live ballots are driven by unarmed civilians to receiving stations throughout the city. There's no reason for this person to deliver ballots on every day of early voting to be armed. And to Don's point, there is no dual control if only one person is delivering those ballots. Also on early voting, how are you considering social distancing and the 10 people maximum at any gathering? I'm sure that several other EV locations will have to be changed to allow for better separation between machines and workers. And I have this question. How are you complying with the order to allow no more than 10 people in any gathering? If you have 8 workers, then there are only 2 voters going to be allowed in the site at one time. The super site in the loop is way over 10 with all the employees. How will you comply with this order? On election day, cleaning supplies, sanitizer, and PPE. At the March primary, the only wipes that we had at my polling place were the wipes I brought from home. There was no instruction from Election Central on how to set up our site to socially distance, best practices for cleaning, or how to keep ourselves and voters safe. Vast improvements must be made, including require all workers to wear masks, strongly recommend all voters wear masks. As much as it's great to expose kids to the electoral process, voters should not bring their children to vote with them unless childcare cannot be found. The election site should be required to provide adequate soap and paper hand towels in their restrooms to support the voting public throughout the day. Voters should queue up outside of the polling places versus inside. Enough judges should be provided to support line management and social distancing behaviors. In March, I set an alarm on my phone to ring every hour. When the alarm rang, we all washed our hands and wiped down all surfaces. While not perfect, it was a good reminder to keep up the cleaning. Voters should be encouraged to bring their own pen and Sharpie to use to complete the application and the ballot. Pens and Sharpies should be cleaned after each use and laid on the table for the voter to pick up and use versus handing the voter the pen from worker to voter. As much as I love them, we should probably get rid of the wristbands for this election. Please find another hand sanitizer vendor. The stuff you provided in March was like poison. It burned your hands and turned them raw. Please purchase a different brand. And exactly how are we supposed to comply by the 10-person gathering rule? Finally, support us. Kind words go a long way. After another 18-hour election day with about 500 interactions between 2 precincts, I was wiped out and promptly spent 2 weeks in self-isolation. You know what would have been great? An email or a text even with a word of thanks. Thanks for working in a tough situation. Thanks for supporting democracy, but nothing. You could have even written it earlier and programmed it to send out that night or the next morning. Gratitude can go a long way. And I have my comments in writing that I'll forward to the board that I would like to be included. Thank you.
Thank you. And Sylvia, do we have any further public comments?
No further comments, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Mr. Lasker, is there a need for executive session?
Not today, Madam Chair.
Okay. If there isn't, and if there are no further questions, is there a motion to adjourn to our next regularly scheduled meeting on May 26th, 2020?
So moved, Madam. Okay, then seconded by Commissioner Kresse.
It has been properly moved and seconded. And is there all ayes, please?
Commissioner Kresse votes aye.
Commissioner Swain?
Aye.
Okay. And so we are now, the motion passes and we are now adjourned. Thank you all very much. We appreciate everything. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, the board meeting of May 12, 2020 has adjourned. We thank you for participating and we ask that you disconnect your line.